Hello, everyone, and welcome to our very first episode of Platform Talks. We're so excited that you're here today. Give it a couple of seconds while people are joining us. But I'm Amiee Keenan, the founder of the ISV Society, and help launch the ERP update as well. And of course, Platform Talks is something new that we just started and initiated, and we're excited to have Clarus Tax Technologies kicking it off with us. And basically what this is going to be is a new monthly conversation series where we explore real business challenges impacting ERP teams, finance leaders, operational professionals, consultants, and technology partners. So we're all talking about the hidden operational cost of sales tax complexity. And if any of you know anything, you know sales tax is very complex. Nothing is easy about it. So very excited to have Tara on with us to talk about it.
Great. Thank you, Amiee.
You're very welcome. So just again, this is a new conversational series, and this is what we're going to be exploring on this conversational series. It's going to be the last Wednesday of every month at 2:30 Eastern time for 30-ish minutes. And so when you sign up once, this is reoccurring, you are in it for life. So you're hooked, you're just with us through the ride. So so excited that you signed up with us today, and feel free to share this with other people on your team or people in the community that you think could also benefit from this and learn. And I'm just going to check the chat because I see a chat. Oh, it's a bot chat. Okay. So if you do have any questions, of course, feel free to put them in the chat or just chat with us in the chat. We're happy to answer or anything that you might have, any questions that you may have regarding our topic for today, which obviously is a good one, and very excited to chat. So just to kind of paint the picture, tell the story, when did sales tax become an operational challenge? So Tara is going to help us talk all about that, because sales tax isn't about just tax rates, as you may or may not know. And I don't think many organizations really set out expecting tax to become something that really impacts daily operations and how it touches all of these sides on the right that you see: finance, reporting, audits, ERP processes. Sales tax is that thing that quietly sits in the background. So when we start talking about it, we really have to understand it. And that's why we have Tara here today, to really help us see the challenges with sales tax and how there's easier processes to just automate everything and not ever have to worry about it again. I know I don't want to figure out sales tax rates and or jurisdictions and or nexus and all that stuff that we'll be talking about, because it's crazy, crazy complex. Just to give you an example. So I used to work for a sales tax company. This is the only reason why I know this. Otherwise, I wouldn't know anything about sales tax and how complex it is. But one of the just intricacies of sales tax is that if you go to New York and you get a bagel, it's taxed differently, whether it's sliced or whether it's not sliced, and you just take it either way. One's taxable and one's not. That's how it can get granular. It can get the tax. Some candy bars are considered food and some aren't. So the ones that are considered food, hey, you can have that for dinner, I guess. I don't know, but it's, not taxable. So just intricacies like that is just how you can understand how complex sales tax can really be. So why does this matter? Especially as organizations grow, this is when it can really get complex, and this is when you can really think about when we're going into more states, because hey, we shouldn't get penalized for growing our companies. That's the main goal. But you're getting into more states, you have more transactions, you have more taxable scenarios or exemption certificates, and definitely more compliance requirements. So we need to really think about, at what point when we start growing does this process stop scaling? And And to be honest with you, I feel like no matter if you're a small, medium, or large company, I feel like it's always going to be an issue. It can always be complex, and it's always something that we should automate if we can, because it can be confusing and it can be a pain in the butt to make sure you're updating everything regarding tax rates every month. And I know I wouldn't want to waste my time doing that. So I feel like growth is a complexity, and we're going to talk why it is a complexity and how there's solutions out there to help. So with that, Tara, would you like to introduce yourself and let's
Perfect.
talk about,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Thank you, Amy. So my name is Tara MacLeod. I'm one of the account executives here at Clarus Tax Technologies. And prior to that, I spent 10 years at a previous tax automation company as well. So very familiar of all the solution and how the challenges are out there for every business that is either selling a product or not selling a product, so exempting. So you're having to do one or two things, right? You're having to collect tax or show why you're not collecting tax, or really do both. So I'm excited to be here and just kind of talk about the different challenges, the struggles that are out there for these businesses, and really how an automation solution can come into play and really help alleviate all the challenges and as well as audit risk, right? So you want to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that you're getting it right.
Exactly. So let's talk about where organizations struggle and start with, at this point, when does sales tax really become complex and becoming a real issue?
Yeah. So, in my experience, I've often, when companies move beyond a relatively simple footprint, so maybe it's they expand nationally, maybe it's a launch of a new online sales channel, or they begin serving a larger mix of exempt and taxable customers. So, really, the challenge isn't usually volume alone, it's more of a combination of volume and variation. Like one tax treatment differs significantly across customers, products, jurisdictions, manual processes really start breaking down.
Yeah, I agree. And regarding like jurisdictions, right? Jurisdictions within a state can be really complex as well. Like one side of the street may have a different tax rate than the other side of the street. And so that's why it can really become complex. And as you said, when you grow and you create more of this, I'm going into other states, I'm shipping out different products, I need to be exempt or not exempt. How do I have to prove that? So that leads into what tends to happen when these exemption certificates aren't managed well.
Yeah.
So,
So this is,
Oh, sorry, Murph.
uh, um, you hit on a couple of things there. And in my state, Oklahoma, we have 467 sales tax jurisdictions, and each one of them consider sales tax differently. I mean, as you were mentioning earlier, they might think of an item as being taxable or non-taxable, depending on how it's used. I know, for example, I had a company that was in the radiator business that order radiators in. If they sold the radiator to a customer, it was taxable. If they installed the radiator for the customer. It wasn't taxable at all. And so it just, yeah, there's so many complexities. I
Mhm.
know the first time that I ever really thought about it was about 30 years ago when I was in New York City. And the lawyer friend of mine who I was with, we went down to an area of town and he bought 30 Mont Blanc um, pens, uh, fountain pens, because he traditionally gave those to the people he was doing business with. And he had them shipped. And I wondered, why did you have them shipped? You're paying shipping. But of course, he didn't have to pay any tax by having them shipped out of state. And at that time, uh, Oklahoma didn't even have use tax. So
Mm.
they didn't collect any tax. He paid a little bit of shipping and avoided the tax. Uh, and when this Nexus thing came about, the Wayfair uh, ruling, uh, really, that's when all heck broke loose because people for years had been sending stuff out of state and not worrying about the tax. They were maybe supposed to, but they didn't. And
Mhm.
suddenly they had a presence in a state because of the volume of business they did.
Mhm.
Anyway,
Yes, it's crazy how complex it can get.
Mhm.
That's for sure. So let's talk about exemption certificates and how if they're not managed well or if you're not tracking them or whatever it may be, what tends to happen with that?
Yeah. So really, this is one of the biggest hidden risks organizations face. So when exemption certificates are stored in, say, emails, file folders, spreadsheets, teams start losing visibility into what's current, what's expired, and what's missing. So really, the often issue that we see become is until an audit occurs. So then at that point, if the documentation can't be produced quickly, companies find themselves defending transactions that it should have been exempt but are now create unexpected liability. So certificate management isn't just an administrative task. It's really a risk management process. So when I'm talking to CFOs and controllers, I always ask them this question. I say, if you had a check for $10,000, would you keep it in a banker box? Probably not, because as an example of an audit, say that auditor was to find that invalid certificate that had uncollected tax revenue, say an example of $800, which would be 8%, and then you calculate that over, say, 36 months, which is very conservative, that would work out to over $28,000 in fees that they owe, and that's not even including interest, penalties, or fines. So I always tell companies, treat your exemption certificates as they are currency, because
Yeah.
they could cost you.
Right. And I feel like exemption certificates are the things you don't think about. Like you
Mhm.
just, oh, I have them, but then they expire and you don't think about them again. And then you get audited and then you're in trouble or they're stuck in a filing cabinet somewhere. And so
Exactly.
if you can have them automated and or streamlined and or sent be in the cloud, so to speak, that's much easier, obviously, than worrying about having filing cabinets of paper
Mhm.
and or worrying about if they're up to date or not.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, this is probably my favorite question out of all of them, and I'm sure Murph, this is probably one of your favorites too. So the reason why we launched the ERP update, right, Murph, is to obviously bring all of our ERPs together. And because the ecosystem is massive, and why should we be in silos? And why should we go find content for one ERP somewhere and then go find content for another ERP somewhere else? Why can't everything just be in one place for everyone to view? So that leads to this question of why doesn't having an ERP actually solve this compliance automatically?
Yeah. So really, this is a question we hear quite often. ERPs are excellent systems for managing the transactions and core business processes, but compliance requirements are constantly changing, as we know. The tax rates change, nexus obligations change, taxability rules change, exemption requirements even vary by jurisdiction. So most ERP systems weren't designed to continuously manage all of that complexity on its own. So what we often see is organizations relying on customizations, manual updates, or external processes to really bridge that gap.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I uh I akin this to why would you try to practice law if you don't have access to case law? Uh, it's totally ridiculous. And to think that your ERP, which is really a fancy, sophisticated calculator, uh, I mean, it basically is accounting plus a little more. To think
Yeah.
your ERP is going to solve sales tax is ridiculous. You have to have a sales tax engine, and ERPs have a slot for an engine. Plug the engine in, that's going to do your tax calculations. But you've got to rely on that sales tax engine to stay compliant. Because as you said, if I got 476 jurisdictions here, imagine across just the United States how many there are. So how are you ever going to hope to do that without having an actual sales tax engine?
Yep. And that obviously leads to a great lead into our next question, Murph. What's happening behind the scenes when these calculations are still manual?
Yeah. And unfortunately, there's a lot more involved than leadership realizes. I'm sorry if anyone's in leadership on this call. But someone is really having to research the rates. Someone is validating the taxability. Someone is checking exemption status. Someone is reconciling the reports. And often those tasks are spread across multiple people and departments. So really the cost isn't only the labor involved, it's also the risk of inconsistencies, the delays, and human error that really can impact both compliance as well as the customer experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
So a quick little story here, although none of my stories are quick, but I did have I had a client who for years using a accounting solution just left sales tax blank and they added an item so they could manually plug in the sales tax. And their clerk would literally call the city clerk of every city where they were shipping to in order to get what the most current tax was, then figure it out on their calculator and plug in the amount. Can you imagine spending 15 or 20 minutes to try to get the sales tax right on one transaction? That's what they were doing.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's fascinating to me. And to think on the customer side, like how do you know you're getting the right tax rate? Like, are they overcharging you, undercharging you? You don't know. And if that price of the cost of that invoice is in thousands of dollars, that could be a significant amount.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, last but not least. So in regards to sales tax compliance, what do you think businesses are looking for now that they may not have been looking for 3 to 4 years ago or may not have thought about, and how that life cycle of sales tax has changed over the last 3 to 4 years?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I really think the conversation has shifted. So historically, many organizations focus on simply calculating the tax correctly. And today they're looking at for visibility, scalability, and really the confidence. They want to know where they have nexus. They want exemption certificates organized and accessible. They really want to be audit readiness, and they want the reporting that doesn't require manual reconciliation every month. But most importantly, they want the process that they can support growth without requiring that headcount.
Yeah.
So I'm going to interject something here. I think that most businesses who are using a sales tax engine and those who aren't, who are considering a sales tax engine, are really wanting one thing: peace of mind over the fact that they're not going to wind up having a sales tax nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what they really want, is peace of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's great about it is it works right in the background. You don't even have to worry about it. It's like set it and forget it, pretty much.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, let's talk about the hidden work around sales tax. So obviously we touched upon this in our discussions and in the questions, but I really love this slide because it highlights something many organizations probably underestimate is the challenge isn't just tax rates, right? It's all the work that's surrounding that. So that comes down to everything you see here: exemption certificates, nexus, reporting, documentation, as you mentioned, Tara, audit readiness, multiple jurisdictions. So when organizations start evaluating these processes, there's probably a lot of things that pop up that might surprise them that they haven't thought about, and how complex it can really be, and what this includes, and how this is really touching upon many parts of the organization as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that really brings us to the core message of today's discussion. So when people think about sales tax, they often think about the rates and the calculations. But the reality is, Amiee, that you just said, it's only one piece of that puzzle. And so the hidden work happens around everything else that you see up on this screen. So like managing those exemptions, preparing those reports, and managing those requirements across multiple jurisdictions. So those operational activities are where organizations spend a tremendous amount of time and where many of the biggest risks emerge. So the companies that handle growth more effectively are usually the ones that recognize sales tax isn't simply a compliance function anymore. It's the operational process that needs to scale alongside the business.
Yes. And with that, what does that look like? Are you ready?
Let me show you. Okay, let me just share my screen here. Second, and share. Okay. Do you see my screen here where it says AccuCalc, Clarus?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so just what I wanted to point out is this is the behind the scenes that I'm showing you. So pre-built integrations into ERP, e-commerce, point of sale platforms. So I'm just showing you where the magic happens. So I'm just going to walk through and show you and calculate a tax transaction. So I'm going to go over here, click calculate tax calculation. And then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an invoice. And I'm going to put in some information where I'll put the taxpayer. So who's the taxpayer? We're going to use Jeff's sales company. And then the document type, we can pick sales invoice, sales order, or test. We'll just do a sales invoice. And then down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a state, and we're going to pick on Texas. And then we're going to put in a zip code of 78701. And then down here, I'm going to use the invoice date. So we're going to use today's date, and we're going to do an invoice, and we're going to pick a number in 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5. And the invoice line, we're just going to do one line item. We're going to keep it simple, and we're going to do the amount of $100. Now, when I put in all that information, I'm going to save that. And what is going to happen is that call is going to go out to that the AccuCalc solution here, and it's going to basically walk that decision through, right? The who, the what, the where, what you're selling. So it's going to ask all that information and push that calculation back. So here we can see Texas, the zip code, the line amount, $100, exemption. There's no exemption, but we have a solution that can manage exemption certificates and all that good stuff. So just keep that on the back of your head. So the taxable amount here is $100. So it breaks out the tax here, showing you the total tax as well as the state and the local tax jurisdiction. Now, let's use another example where I'm going to edit. So this is going to be the same taxpayer, the same address. It's a little slow, I'm sorry. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in some information where I'm going to pick product codes. So we're going to use SaaS, software as a service, because this one's a little tricky. And then here, what I'm going to do is come down here and save. And when I go down here to the bottom, you're going to see here with Texas, the sale amount, the exemption, the taxable amount, and again, all those breakouts. And this is why one of those taxability rules in Texas, where with SaaS products, it's taxable at 80%. Okay. I'll show you one other quick little example here where I'm just going to edit. And then I'm going to put in, we're going to pick on my state here, Arizona, where it's 900 degrees out, and we're going to put in my address, 8258. And we're going to keep SaaS. So we're going to keep that product, same price, all that information.
Yes, but it's a dry heat.
So is an oven. And here we go. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom. And for Arizona with SaaS product, here you can see it's taxable at 100%. So using a solution in place, what I'm showing you here is it's upkeeping the tax rates, the tax rules, the boundaries onto any rule on what you're selling and how to sell it. So you're making sure that you're never overcharging, undercharging your customer, but really the big picture if you were ever into an audit, you have that detailed information.
And if you were trying to do that manually in your invoice, you'd have to create a discount for the SaaS exemption and then let your solution uh, manually calculate it, or you manually calculate it and add the sales tax, because there's no way for any accounting solution to be able to apply that kind of a exemption rule.
No, no, not at all. Not at all. So again, that's just kind of showing you the behind the scenes, but also just wanted to point out too, I know we just have a couple minutes here, is Nexus Map, the tracker. So this is one big feature that companies really like to see, is to get that visual of where they're coming up for exemption certificates. And I just see if I can pull up some detail here. Let's go 2025. And let's go back here to Jeff, sales company, and let's see what I can pull up here. So here you go. So it just kind of gives you an example of the US, and it's just showing you here where you're registered. So it's color coded, so it gives you that visual. But if you scroll down here to the bottom, it also gives you the amount. So it's letting you know by each state what their thresholds are, that transaction count, and that amount. So it just gives you a proactive instead of a reactive approach to making sure that you're compliant.
I like that.
Oops. Yeah.
And Jeff did a lot of really good business. My goodness, there.
Clap to Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
He's probably living on a Caribbean island now, doing that much business.
Yeah.
Took his money with him.
Yes.
All
Yes.
right, let me go back to my slides. All right. So just to wrap it all up with our key takeaways, obviously we hope that you see how complex sales tax can be, the challenges of trying to manage it all and keep track of it. And the visibility is so important. I loved that map that Tara showed. Manual processes obviously create risk, and who wants to do any of this manually, to be honest? I don't think anybody would. So you just need to have a solution that manages it all. And how growth can really change your requirements. It can change your jurisdictions, your nexus, your taxability, and then reviewing your processes and making sure you're alleviating those bottlenecks that are really hindering from not only growth, but just from being audit ready, from making sure that you're having the right tax rates, the right jurisdictions, the right, as Tara had showed, just switching the state, how everything just changes. And just thinking about that just makes my head explode. So I wouldn't even want to, I wouldn't even want to deal with any of that. And yeah, so those hopefully you just got a lot out of this today, and that you really like our first platform talks. And it's just one way that we want to help educate you and keep the ERP ecosystem together, and share some challenges and how challenges can be alleviated, because the ERP, while it does a great job of the accounting piece, there are so many amazing solutions out there that help plug in to really alleviate these bottlenecks and automate processes in the back end that we don't think about. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much, Tara, for joining
Thank
us
you.
and sharing some amazing outlooks on sales tax. And thank you, Murph, for helping out as well in the conversation and providing your guidance and expertise. With
Happy
that,
to be here.
all right. And with that, stay tuned for next month. We'll be sending out information on our next month's platform talks. And if you do have any recommendations or would like to share any of your expertise, your tips and tricks, your knowledge, feel free to let us know. We're happy to share that on the ERP update. We're always looking for great content, great articles. Murph writes a ton of great articles, so make sure you check them out. And with that, we will let you all go. But thank you for being here for our first platform talks. We truly do appreciate it.